Welcome to Revival Podcast. We're still in January, and this month is right after holidays. And a lot of us may have some hope for 2022. Maybe we don't. Maybe we're just so done with all the uncertainty that's going on. Freedom to Move Forward kind of talks about this, and we have a returning guest, Michael. It's been a few months, but thank you, Michael, for joining us and agreeing to be um, here to talk about this topic. As subtle as it is, I do appreciate you coming and taking your time to share your insight.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So I like to share a disclaimer. I know wherever you live around the world, you may have different resources, but in the United States, it's 1-800-273-8255 is one resource among others. That is National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I do encourage all you who are listening to research what is around you, what resources are there. I go right into quotes, Mike, and and seeing today when we record this is Martin Luther King Day. I didn't really plan this. It's Martin Luther King quote. It says, "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
Well, I think about when I tell people just keep going. And when I say just keep going is you know you want to get somewhere. And when you're making the journey, you never know, you can't see your destination, but you still keep going.
Yeah.
And when you keep going, you'll eventually get there if you stay on the path. Now, if you stop or go off the path, then you'll never get there. So one step at a time, one day at a time.
I also like the idea that I heard this before. If you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So it's kind of like you have to take the step. Either way, and you may mess up at times, but it's about getting back up. On this topic, and obviously the focus is on recovery, and with you, mental health. When we talk about freedom, what does that mean to you, and why is it important when it comes to mental health, Mike?
Freedom is the ability to accomplish what one sets forth to do in a positive way. And the reason why I say in a positive way is because you can have freedom to do what you want and be doing something negative, like you could be hurting somebody or hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And you have the freedom to do that, but it doesn't get you usually what you want or where you want to go. So just striving to do the best we can and just be 1% better than we are from the previous day. And like we brought out earlier, just moving ahead and taking that step.
Yeah. We're talking about mental health here, and both me and Mike are part of NAMI. And a lot of our peers, and from your own experience, and from your peers, when trying to move forward in mental health, what has worked for you personally? What have you seen work for others? Making those notable steps forward. What have you seen worked?
Well, one thing that I know works for me is being consistent. Because we may do things or we may try things in mental health, like we may try medicine. And if we're not consistently taking it to where it gets to like a therapeutic level, we'll never see results. Or we may try one coping skill and it may not seem to be working right away, but if we stay consistent with it, or try other coping skills or try other things and really try to have a holistic approach to recovery, I found that works best for me as well as some of the other peers I talk to, because medication is not the end all beat all. Having one or two coping skills is not enough. It takes a lot of different things that you do in concert with each other to really find that sweet spot, so to speak, to stay on a stable recovery path.
I like how you say consistent. Me and you talked about this. I love the phrase annoyingly consistent. I think in my recovery, and I think from what I've seen also, just affirm what you're saying, is being consistent. A daily routine does help. If you're all over the place, certain and not putting your eggs in one basket, like the old saying. Learning to be adaptable. Albert Einstein coined this and recognized that humans. There's a lot of knowledge out there, and even more so now. It is kind of comical to kind of think just to know facts per se than being able to adapt to the situation at hand. Think before 2020, before COVID, people weren't thinking about the way things are now. But we are in recovery, and as a whole, we are trying to adapt to the situation. Sometimes they're not ideal, the situation, but I like in the beginning, like how Martin Luther King says, you don't have to see the whole staircase. It's just take the first step. And I think taking the first step, at least, is part of the freedom I've experienced, and I feel that's what you're saying, is taking that first step and understanding that consistency you'll find more results. If you go here, this medicine doesn't work, you go there, this and this. The problem is, at least from my experience, and you could tell me, Mike, what your thoughts are, you can get discouraged very quickly. You could kind of feel like, well, nothing's working. No one's here for me. No one cares. So it's hard in recovery when you are jumping from one to another. And from my experience and what you said, it usually doesn't work well. So, Mike, has that been the same experience with you?
Yes, people talk about, you know, it's funny. I have some people that I know that said, Mike, you seem like you live a boring life.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and I told them, it's not that it's boring, it's structured in a certain way where I try to manage my time the best I can, because we all have 24 hours in the day.
Yeah.
And I do, what they call block scheduling. Like I may schedule something for like between 30 minutes to an hour block of my time. That way, when I'm not sleeping, I have my day pretty much, I know what I'm going to do, and then I could get to my to-do list, and it'll be like easier to check off of that to-do list. And
Yeah.
if you have that schedule, or if you have that, well, I know I'm going to do this or this around that certain time, then it's easier to, stay focused and stay consistent. Like, I really
Yeah.
want to stress the consistency part. Because if you just, oh, I'm going to do this, then you don't finish that and you jump to something else. I'm going to do that. And
Yeah.
then before you know it, your day is gone, and everything's been scattered around, and you really haven't accomplished anything.
Yeah, and you can't really measure how good things are working with whatever you're trying. And on a other angle, it like I like what you said before. You're like, a lot of people say is my life is boring. Some people they think my life is boring. Like, we could never make anyone happy, and that's not the point. The point is, there's a lot of people, and I think who have a lot to say of how boring and what we should do. Marketers spend all their lives trying to convince us of what we need and what will make us happy. But I feel when it comes to recovery, it can be kind of destructive, self-destructive, when you're stuck there, when you're like, well, only if I get this. And I'm mentioning this because this phrase, I've said it, a lot of people have said it in different modes, is this phrase of it's okay to not be okay. I think back when, what was it, Mr. Rogers, when I was on TV, I don't know, I remember watching him. Yeah, it was kind of weird and kind of nice. It was just a safe place, and a lot of times people coined that phrase, but they tried their best at the time, and it was revolutionary of addressing certain concerns they had in society in a very digestible way. But it's okay to not be okay in mental health. In your experience, why is this? Why is this important to moving forward? In your own opinion, Michael?
Well, the reason why that statement I found true is because if you don't accept that things are gonna go bad,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't accept the fact that not everything is sunshine and rainbows,
Mm-hmm.
then you end up doing or causing yourself more harm to you than what you need to take, because everything in life is a balance. There's a good and there's a bad. Not
Mm-hmm.
everything could go good all the time,
No.
because then you run into what some people like to call toxic positivity, where if
Yeah.
everything seems to be going good in your life, you know, when bad things happen, you don't face it with with the effort of saying, well, this is bad now, but it'll get better.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have the idea everything's gonna be okay, and that could lead to a destructive mindset.
Yeah. I'm totally with you, Mike. I think sometimes there's two ways to cope with things. There's the emotional coping. That's just something I can't control. I lose a loved one, Mike. You're not going to tell me, there's no what. The grieving process takes time. Now, if I broke my arm, Mike, it's a totally different way of coping. I have to go to the doctor and get it seen. I gotta get seen to get that recasted and all that stuff. But a lot of times, at least from my experience, people treat the emotional coping skills in an incorrect when it comes to something that you could practically take steps towards. Let's say I'm sick, I have a cold, or I'm not feeling well. Just sitting still is an action, is a choice, and sometimes that can be, like you said, problematic. And when you have the mindset that conflict is the enemy, when people say something like, I think you could do it this way, or give you critical criticism, but in a helpful way. Hey, I think this may work better. If that is something you can't digest, if everything has to be, like you said, sunshine rainbows, there's no growth. Everything, and you're just holding from the seams. And the problem, like Mike's saying, is nothing gets addressed. Accountability becomes a bad word. Nothing actually is real, because all you're trying to do is maintain something. I remember there's this word in Welsh. I can't say it. It says, a homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to. The nostalgia and grief for the lost place of your past, places that never were. It's a weird word. It's an untranslatable word in any other language, but I like this because I think a lot of us sometimes, in some ways, we're lost in this. We look at our high school, or we look back when we were younger, as the glory days, but if we really took a real good look, it wasn't as good as we're saying it was. It wasn't as good, but the nice thing about understanding that, it gives you the freedom to be hopeful for what's next. If your best memories are 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would say reflect on where you are, because I think it's good to be hopeful. Be realistic, but be hopeful, especially in recovery, because I found that has been freeing for me, because freedom has many meanings for many people, and we're talking about recovery here. So, Michael, as we kind of sort of wrap things up, but I want to hear a little bit more from you. What drives you towards helping others? You kind of hinted on it in the beginning, but why? What drives you to help others currently? Because you do a lot, Mike, and a lot of people no one knows. But I'm just saying, what drives you to do this?
Well, one thing I tell people is, I had my grandfather when I was 13. He told me, he's like, Mike, there's some things that you should know. One, hurt people hurt other people.
Mm-hmm.
And two, to leave a legacy, people think you have to have kids and that's the only way you'll leave your legacy and be remembered. But he says you could leave a legacy through your actions and
Yeah.
become a legend in your own right. And when
Mhm.
he said that, at first I didn't understand what it meant, but as I got older, I seen you can help people and do good and leave this legacy of goodness where when you're not around, people will still be talking about you. Like I want in maybe 10 or 20 years someone's kids or grandkids to say, you know what, there was this dude named Michael Jones Jr. and he
Mm.
helped my grandpa or my mom, and
Mm.
I really appreciate it, or he inspired me to go on and help others. And
Yeah.
that is what I strive for. I strive to so that my deeds can be remembered. And it's nice to see, even right now, like somebody I helped maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, they could come on to be like, hey Michael, remember me, you helped me do da da da, or you
Mhm.
helped me get through da da da. And that feels good to hear when someone says you helped me out, or you you know some people, we may have saved their lives and not even realized it.
Yeah.
Because people, I tell people all the time, everybody needs somebody that they can talk to and vent to, where that person will just listen. They
Yeah.
won't give them advice, they won't tell them what to do, they just sit down and listen.
Mm. Yeah. I I totally, a lot of times when I think about how many people we impact a day, we don't even know. We and sometimes when we may never know, but I like the idea of what like. I think Maya Angelou said, a lot of people won't remember what you say or all this stuff, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And if you're positive and you've been there with the person, it does impact. If you just listen, I find myself, Mike, a lot of times with nothing to give back. Nothing. I have no resource at the moment, but I'm present with that person. Whatever. So I feel I do like the idea that we can pass on the legacy, I would say, an idea of hope. The idea that doesn't have to end here. That you can help others, and at the end of the day, I remember also coining my helping others became my healing. Serving was my recovery. And I think in many different ways that has been true for many peers that I've spoken to, including you, Mike. It's something that's cathartic to help others, because you could see it help not only help them but help the people they start reaching, and it's kind of this cascading effect, and it's inspiring, because in a real matter of things, this is a very difficult, messy thing, and I would say our connections and how we build them, and next month is building our connections, but really matter of how this kind of dispels and be digested towards the people around us. Quite frankly, mental health wasn't a big topic for centuries, but when people began to realize how people were treated, right? Well, people were treated, and realizing that they could be your family members, and I think that keeping the human side of it many times has been that bridge forward. I want to say, Mike, it's always good talking to you about this mental health and recovery and and how to move forward. And it's just one step at a time. But any final thoughts you would like to share with those listening today?
The last thing I want people to remember or take from this talk about freedom is, in search of your own personal freedom, you don't have to infringe on other people's freedom. And like I said, some people, they don't do it with bad intentions or
Mm-hmm.
malice,
Mm-hmm.
but they try to fix or correct things that they think are wrong.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you know, if the person asks, that's good, but don't try to force your ideas onto other people.
It's always wonderful talking to you, Mike. Thank you for being a guest with us today. I'm sure we'll see you again. Remember to stay updated with Revive Ministries on the various platforms, reviveministriesfl.com. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote. Maya Angelou, I said it before. There's another quote. She says, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them."